9. Intermission, Glaciela. You've unlocked a brief intermission.
Weeks ago.
The chamber was carved from the living ice of the northern mountains, its walls smoothed by centuries of bitter winds that found their way through every seam. A long table of dark ancient wood dominated the center, an import from warmer lands, a reminder that Wizette had once traded freely with the world before Curry's paranoia closed the gates. Now it sat mostly empty, its surface covered with maps whose edges curled from the cold. Glaciela stood at the head of the table, her pale hair pulled back in a warrior's tail, her hand resting on the map's depiction of their borders. The lines seemed almost mocking, vast, sprawling, impossible. She traced the jagged edge where Finnes jutted into their territory like a blade. Behind her, Rosaluna paced. Her footsteps made no sound on the frost-hardened stone, but Glaciela felt each one like a heartbeat counting down to conflict. "You've seen the reports from the eastern villages," Rosaluna said. Not a question. "The remnants of Moraga's army have been spotted near the Finnes border. They're not raiding. They're waiting." Glaciela didn't turn. Waiting for what? Moraga is dead. Finnes has no leadership. Kilfe is gone. Aldoa, whatever title she held, never solidified power. "They're waiting for us to show weakness." Rosaluna moved into her peripheral vision, a figure of sharper angles and darker conviction. Where Glaciela wore the practical leathers of a soldier, her sister had donned the ceremonial whites of their house. A statement, perhaps, or a challenge. Every noble who still draws breath in this kingdom is watching to see which of us will flinch first. And every mercenary, every bandit, every snake from Finnes is waiting to see if our borders hold. Our borders? Glaciela finally looked up, meeting her sister's eyes. The same pale brown as their father's, the same stubborn set to the jaw. "Rosaluna, look at this map. Really look at it." She gestured broadly. "We have the largest land perimeter of any kingdom save perhaps Auern. Our army was decimated by Jaden. What little remained was further splintered in our disagreement. And now you want to commit what few soldiers we have to border patrol."
I want to commit them to survival. Rosaluna stepped closer, her voice dropping to something almost gentle, the tone she used when she believed she was being the reasonable one. "Sister, I took arrows for you. I would take them again. But you cannot protect a kingdom by letting everyone in."
"I'm not proposing we let everyone in. I'm proposing we stop pretending we have the strength to keep anyone out." Glaciela straightened, her hand pressing flat against the map. "The refugees from Leonis are already here. The miasma consumed their homeland. They had nowhere else to go. More will come when the realm scourge reaches Ovis. People with skills, people with knowledge, people who could help us rebuild. People with no allegiance to Wizette." Rosaluna's voice hardened. "You offer them land, you offer them coin, and what do they offer in return? Loyalty until a better offer arrives? The moment a new Finnes leader emerges." "There is no Finnes leader. There may never be one."
Yet. Rosaluna seized the word like a weapon. There is no Finnes leader yet. But there will be. There always is. And when that day comes, every refugee you've settled on our land, every foreigner you've handed a farm and a future, will remember where they came from. Will remember that their allegiance was bought, not earned. Glaciela was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was quieter. "You think I don't understand the risk?"
"I think you understand it perfectly. I think you've chosen to ignore it because the alternative, admitting that we must be hard, that we must be closed, that we must put Wizette first, feels cruel to you." Rosaluna's expression softened, just slightly. "Cruelty is not the same as weakness, Glaciela. Father was cruel because he enjoyed it. Being hard, being willing to make the choices that keep our people alive, that is not cruelty. That is love."
Love. Glaciela tasted the word. You want to close the borders out of love. You want to strip the nobles of their land and power. Immediately. Yes. Rosaluna's eyes flashed. They've already tried to assassinate us. Rogel hired Fennes mercenaries because he couldn't find Wizette soldiers willing to betray us. That tells you everything you need to know about where the nobles' loyalties lie. They will not stop. They will never stop. The only way to secure this kingdom is to remove them. Completely. Decisively. Now.
And then what? A red parade through the streets? Drag them from their estates and execute them in the snow? Glaciela's voice rose. I'm not opposed to dealing with the nobility. I drove a blade through Curry's heart myself, removed his head just to be sure. I executed the noble who sent Moraga's remnants after us. But if we slaughter them all, Rosaluna, if we become the thing they accused us of being, what kind of kingdom are we building? A surviving one.
A terrified one. Glaciela shook her head. You keep making parallels to other nations, other histories. I've heard you speak of the czars, of revolutions, of blood in the streets. But we are not those other nations. We are Wizette, and we have a choice about what kind of future we build. Then, tell me your future. Rosaluna crossed her arms, her posture a challenge. Tell me how you feed our people when our farms are frozen and our workforce is dead. Tell me how you rebuild our cities when we have no one to rebuild them. Tell me how you defend a border that stretches across half the continent with an army that barely exists. Glaciela took a moment to still her nerves. Arguing with her sister had a tendency to get the better of her. Then she turned the map slightly, pointing to the southern territories, the vast, empty spaces that had never been properly developed.
Land, she said simply. We have more land than we know what to do with. The monarchy, father and his predecessors, abandoned the south. They hid in the northern fortress because it was defensible, because no one could invade us here. But that also meant they never built anything. No roads, no farms, no towns, just empty, frozen space that could be something more. She looked up at her sister. I propose we offer land to anyone willing to work it. Wizette citizens first. Absolutely. They get first claim. But after that, refugees, immigrants, people fleeing the realm scourge, fleeing Ovis, fleeing wherever the wars have destroyed their homes. We give them land. We give them a stake in this kingdom, and in return, they give us their labor, their loyalty, their future. Loyalty bought with dirt.
Loyalty built with dirt. There's a difference. Glaciela's voice sharpened. A mercenary fights for coin and leaves when the coin runs out. A farmer who owns his land, whose children will inherit that land, whose future is tied to that land. That farmer fights to protect it. That farmer is Wizette, regardless of where he was born. Rosaluna was quiet for a moment, her jaw working. And the nobles?
We deal with them as they force our hand. Rogel is dead. The ones who conspire against us will follow him. But I will not slaughter every noble family in the kingdom simply because they might become a threat. That's not justice. That's paranoia. It's survival.
It's the same logic Kuri used. Glaciela's voice was soft now, almost gentle. He saw threats everywhere. He closed the borders. He isolated us. And it didn't save him. It only made us weak, alone, an easy prey for Jaden's army.
The words hung in the frozen air. Rosaluna's expression flickered, something raw passing beneath the surface before she controlled it. The refugees from Ovis, she said, finally, her voice carefully neutral. You mentioned they might bring knowledge. What knowledge?
Glaciela allowed herself a small, tired smile. Gunpowder. Magitech. The Crystal Sanctum's technology built the ice golems that guard our deepest vaults. Imagine what else they could build if we gave them reason to share it. A rail network connecting our scattered towns, roads through the mountains, farms that could actually grow something in this frozen wasteland.
You want to turn Wizette into an industrial power?
I want to turn Wazette into something that survives. Glaciela met her sister's eyes. Not just this winter, not just this war, but for generations. A kingdom that isn't just hiding in the north, waiting to be conquered. A kingdom that matters. Rosaluna was silent for a long, waited moment. When she spoke, her voice was quieter than before. And if you're wrong, if the refugees betray us, if the nobles rise up while we're distracted, if Fenes finds a new leader and comes for our borders while we're busy building railroads, then you get to say you told me so. Glaciela's smile was sad now. And we fight, together, like we always have.
Rosaluna looked away, toward the frosted window and the distant mountains beyond. The afternoon light was already fading. It always faded early in Wazette.
I don't agree with you, she said finally. I think you're risking everything on faith in people who have no reason to love us.
I know. But I also know you won't be moved. Rosaluna turned back, and something in her expression had shifted. Not agreement, but acceptance. So I will do what I have always done. I will protect you from the consequences of your idealism. I will watch the borders you won't guard. I will deal with the nobles you won't execute. And when the betrayal comes, I will be there to clean up the mess.
That's not a partnership. It's the only partnership we have. Rosaluna reached out, her cold fingers brushing Glaciela's wrist. I love you, sister. I love Wazette. I will not let either of you fall, even if I have to become the villain you refuse to be.
Glaciela caught her hand before she could withdraw. You're not a villain. You're afraid. We both are. The difference is what we do with that fear.
And what do you do with yours? I build. Glaciela squeezed her sister's fingers. I open the gates. I trust that people, given a chance, will choose to be better than their worst impulses. I believe that Wazette can be more than a frozen fortress hiding from the world.
And if you're wrong?
Then you were right all along, and I'll be grateful you were prepared. Rosaluna held her gaze for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. Then we have an understanding. You build your open kingdom. I prepare for its collapse. Between the two of us, perhaps Wazette survives. Perhaps. Glaciela released her hand and turned back to the map. Now, about the rail network. I was thinking the first line should connect the capital to the southern territories. If we're going to settle refugees there, they'll need a way to get supplies. And a way for our soldiers to reach them if they rebel. If you insist on being pessimistic, yes.
I insist on being prepared. But there was something almost like warmth in Rosaluna's voice now. The familiar rhythm of two sisters who had learned over years of conflict how to disagree without destroying each other.
Outside, the wind howled against the ancient ice. Inside, the two daughters of Kuri bent over their maps and began, piece by piece, to imagine a future for the kingdom their father had nearly destroyed. It would not be easy. It would not be peaceful. But for the first time since the war began, it felt possible.
The debate would continue for hours, borders and nobles and railroads and farms, each sister pushing and pulling, neither fully conceding, both finding the fragile middle ground where their visions could coexist. When they finally emerged from the war room, the winter stars had appeared, cold and distant and utterly indifferent to the fate of one small kingdom on the edge of annihilation.